Welcome, everyone. This is the 70th episode of Women on Wealth. I'm Julina Ogilvie, and today's topic is the fight for financial literacy. And this is near and dear to my heart, as many of you all know. And I couldn't think of anyone better to have this conversation with than Nan Morrison, who is the president and CEO of the Council for Economic Education. If you are not familiar with CEE, I think you're going to be after this wonderful conversation with Nan. Their mission is to provide K through 12 kids the tools and knowledge of personal finance and economics to help them make better decisions for themselves, their families, and their communities, and to learn to successfully navigate an ever-changing economy, which is so true. Prior to CEE, Nan spent 20 years as management consultant, primarily working with technology companies. In addition to CNBC's Financial Wellness Advisory Council, she serves on the advisory board of MIT Center for Finance and Policy, chaired the executive committee of a $100 million agency serving the aging in New York City, and served on the Federal Reserve Centennial Advisory Council. Nan, as if you haven't done enough, you recently served as an advisor to the College Board for a new AP Business Principles course, and is also the founder of Restart Central, an organization that helped small businesses recover in the aftermath of September 11th. And then my favorite part about your bio is you're a fellow triathlete. Hi, Nan.
Hi. I am, but not as giant a triathlete as you are.
Oh, well, we were just talking about all of the time and the precision that it takes sometimes to go through it. So I love it. And thank you so much for joining around this conversation. I'm thrilled to, as you know, I got to know CEE over the last couple of years, and I am trying to find ways to work with your organization. So what a better way to have this conversation. I think the timing is going to be interesting, which we'll talk about in a minute. But can you first explain how you came to CEE and in your involvement?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, I am also very excited to be here. I love, of course, talking about CEE, but it's been great to know and work with you, and your passion is real and you translate that into action every day, especially
Oh,
for women. So I'm very excited about that. So I was your run-of-the-mill management consulting partner, and I got this call, and the headhunter said, well, there's this organization that teaches kids about personal finance and economics in school. And she went on to talk about how so few students really knew about this because people didn't talk about it at home. And it was a giant surprise to me because I come from a family where we talked about money all the time. Both my grandfathers owned small businesses. My dad and my uncles had a small business for many years. So money, business, the markets. My dad was showing me the Wall Street Journal, the little pencil drawings of
oh,
all of the people of Mickey Siebert when I was just a little girl. So
wow.
it was shocking to me that people didn't talk about this at home, but they
Yeah.
don't. And then you start to think, well, I am so fortunate because I get to do a lot of things that I love to do just because I know how to steward my resources well. And I learned that from my parents. And I thought, wow, if they could teach this in school, that would be really helpful. And my mom actually shared with me that when she was growing up, they actually did teach it in school, but it kind of fell by the wayside.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, right in New York City public schools in Brooklyn. So I thought, what a better way to give some help to students everywhere than to be in this role and to try to spread the word and create great programs and carry out the mission of our organization, which is turning 75 this year. And I'll say a
I
little bit more about
saw
that
that. That's
later.
amazing. Yeah. And I also had no idea of the influence your dad had on you at such a young age. And it makes so much sense because we find that everywhere. The influence that we have as young kids, which is why this is so important. Can you talk about what CE provides to the educational system, like how it works?
Sure. CE carries out its mission in three ways. First, we advocate for requirements that personal finance and economics be taught in every state. This absolutely ensures equitable access to every student, not just some kids, but every kid. The second thing is we provide training and professional development and resources to the K through 12 educators. That is the core of what we do. We've been doing that for 75 years. That is deep in our roots, and we are really good at it. And I know because the teachers tell us so. And as the child of a teacher, I can tell you, they will tell you if they are not happy. The final thing we do, and this has been something newer over the last couple of decades, is we provide programming directly to students, primarily to high school students, through two challenges, one in personal finance, one in economics, and a very special program called Invest in Girls. One of the things that I love about all of these programs is that they deepen the students' learning, because it's not just stuff they're learning in a lesson. It's a little bit more experiential, and they also develop access and knowledge about career skills. So the challenges have critical thinking rounds. The Invest in Girls program has time at real financial services companies, because the goal of that program is really to get more young women, especially young women from low and moderate income families and women of color, interested in careers in finance and financial services, because it's a great career, doesn't need to be Wall Street, could be Main Street. Everybody, I just wrote my local school tax bill in the little town where I have a little teeny cottage. And every place needs somebody who understands money, no matter where you are. So it's a great path toward economic stability.
Yeah.
So those are the three things we do: advocacy, professional development, taking care of the educators, and working directly with students.
I love it. And my understanding is the Investing Girls is relatively new to CEE. Is that correct?
Yeah, we actually acquired that. It was a standalone program, but it was growing. And I knew the founder, and I said, I think we can make it bigger and better. And it's grown from a few hundred to now over 2,000 girls in just the few years that we've been stewarding it. It's in many more states because we have an affiliated network across the country of state councils and other professors who work in the states. Education is very local here, and they have picked up this program and made it their own as well. So it's really exciting, and it's a great opportunity for companies to volunteer their space and their female professionals in particular, although it's always great to have a few good men, to talk to the girls about what it's like to have a career in finance.
I love it. And my firm has already volunteered to be one of those in Connecticut. So we're looking forward to that. And one of the questions I get, Nan, all the time from just having published my book that focuses on girls, I would love to hear why you think Invest in Girls is so important.
So first of all, I'm very committed to equitable access for everybody.
Yes.
No matter gender, race, income, everybody needs this knowledge if you're going to live in a capitalist society. But I think it's really important for girls, and it's really important that we talk to them a little differently. First of all, you know that in high school, it's a little easier when you're having a conversation about anything serious to just be with the girls instead of being in a mixed setting. It just is. A lot of cultures discourage conversations about money, and in particular for women. Conversely, a lot of times women are running the household. A lot of times if they're single parent homes, it's very often the mom that's running things, that's the center of these things, and women tend to outlive men. And it's really important, and you know all of this, that women have these skill sets. I think we probably both know some quite well-off women who have lost their husbands, and they are lost, and then they become real targets for scams and fraud and all sorts of other really bad stuff. So it's really important that everybody has these skills. The other piece of Invest in Girls that is so important is introducing these girls to careers in finance and financial services. And as I said earlier, those jobs are a path to financial stability and economic mobility. And a lot of girls don't have the experience that I did of having my dad plop me down next to him on the train, going to New York. And, you know, he worked in the back office in bank operations, but he had buddies who were on the floor of the stock exchange. And that's when all the paper used to fly around. It was really fun. and, you know, you get introduced to all of that. Right. And you're in a place where you can go to a career office in college and look at the list and say, oh, I'm going to apply to these jobs. And you can get a job on Wall Street. So you're kind of in that flow already. Not every girl has that kind of naturally occurring network of resources available to them. And it's not like my dad was a partner at an investment bank. He was just, you know, a manager at a bank. But I had that experience. And I
Yeah.
also was taken to the bank when I was little in the tiny town that we grew up in, right? So I knew it was a small town. I knew the bank manager, you
Yeah.
know, it wasn't a scary place for me. It was just a place where you go to start managing your money when you're a little kid. So
Yes.
having those experiences, that exposure, it's just like learning a sport, right? Like if you grew up in a family where people went out and played softball every night after dinner and took a walk around the block, you are accustomed to being in a family that does sports. And if you didn't, it's like, oh, really, sports? So it's very, very similar. We just, not every girl gets exposed to this when they're growing up, and it's really important that they see that they have a capability and an ability and a pathway to these jobs, and it's not scary at all.
I completely agree, and I love your answer, and I just think we need to keep talking about it, right? It's amazing that you have these money memories at such a young age that were clearly very influential to you. So we just need to make more of them.
You
So
know, one of my favorites that I like to share is that when I was really little, my dad and my uncles, the business they owned was the radio station in town. And on Saturday mornings, sometimes I'd go in with my dad, and they had a soda machine there, and we would empty out the coins, and I would help my dad count the coins and roll them and bring them to the bank. And I got paid for helping. And my
wow.
payment was an Orange Crush, which mom would never let me drink at home, full of sugar and all sorts of evil things.
Yeah.
But I was maybe 5 or 6 years old when I was doing that. So and I still follow the stock Abbott Labs because it was the first stock at the beginning of the stock tables when my dad opened this up and said like pick a stock, and I was like panicked. There were hundreds of them, and I just picked the first one on the table.
Wow.
Um, and the big aha moment on that was that the stock prices were in dollars, right? So it's
Yeah.
like the stock is $26. Like that's such a giant number when you're 7 years old.
Yeah.
So not cents, and things were in fractions then, eighths. So you could learn some math too. I'm a big math person.
Yes.
So yeah, so I have all these really wonderful positive memories
Yeah.
of shopping with my parents, of them counting out cash for things so that I understood that you didn't buy things on credit. But a lot of kids have just the opposite. They have very
Yeah.
negative and sad memories of not having, of not understanding, of debt, of being in having challenging circumstances. Um, we run some family nights, and I was at one this fall in San Diego, not very far from the border, actually, with a lot of immigrant parents and caregivers. And I was talking to some of the women afterwards, and they said, you know, I just got into a lot of trouble with credit, and the community that they formed to talk to each other to help them out was very powerful.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so this idea of women reaching out to other women, I
Mhm.
think can also be really helpful. And if we can imbue that in these young women, that it's okay to talk to your friends
Yeah.
about this and ask for help and guidance,
Uh,
you know, combined with, you know, really important, you know, check out the websites of, you know, Fidelity or Vanguard or Schwab, which give very thoughtful financial
mhm.
information. Then that's really important because having somebody to talk to can be a real game changer, I think, for women and girls.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the questions I have for you, Nan, is CEE publishes a survey of the states every couple of years. I haven't even told you this, but when I was writing my book, I was joking with my publisher on a previous podcast about how technical my book was when I first wrote it. And I had an entire chapter alone based on the research that you all published. I really
Oh.
just was so thrown by what the information that you provided in this research. So I'm going to highly encourage everyone to keep an eye out because this is coming out. It's coming out shortly. We're recording this at the beginning of February, but this new survey is coming out when? It's coming out February 26th.
Monday, February 26th at 11 a.m. The
Yeah.
discussion will be live streamed on CE's YouTube channel, and we're having an event in New York City at the offices of Visa, who have been helping us significantly with our advocacy efforts. They were founding partners along with us at FinEd 50.
Wow.
We're excited to have State Senator Gebhardt from Pennsylvania and also Representative Corey Paris from Connecticut, who was
Wow.
responsible for actually pushing that bill through in Connecticut to have financial education be required for all students in Connecticut. So
Yes.
he'll be joining us as well as some other students. I understand that just this morning that CNBC is going to make sure we get some coverage as well. So we're really
Amazing.
excited about this. It's really important to, keep the momentum going because it's
Yeah.
been a really good 2 years after a long drought.
Yes, absolutely. And can you maybe give us a hint of what the the survey has said maybe in years past, if I can?
Yeah, sure. So we're very thoughtful about how we do the survey. So thank you so much for citing it and paying attention to it in your work. We actually go out and talk to a variety of people in the states. So if there's legislation, we read it, we understand what it means. We also understand how it's being implemented or not. Because it turns out that even in states where there are requirements, it's not always implemented fully, or it's implemented in conjunction with other classes. So we really want to understand. And if you look on our website, you will see that we talk about whether there's a full standalone requirement, whether it's integrated into another course, whether it's just suggested to be taken. So we're very specific about all of this. So we were very disappointed in 20 and 22 because things were not moving along at all. And since literally the day after we published, because we still did a hard copy in 2022, we've had quite a number of states, and now well more than half the states require a class in personal finance. And that's
Finally.
really, really exciting. So we're very excited about that. But to me, the most important thing is what happens afterwards. Otherwise, it is the proverbial a requirement falls in the forest. So
Yes.
what?
Yes.
What's really important afterwards is implementation. We just did a quick and dirty survey of a bunch of the teachers that work with us, right? They were on our database, so they care about professional development. And just under half were from states without a requirement. And in those states, only about a third of them had opportunities to take professional development. And even in the states with requirements, it was only about 40% had the opportunity from their state or school district to have professional development. Look, nobody wants to go into a room unprepared, right? I'm assuming that many of the people listening to you are professionals, and they would never go into a meeting or a presentation without preparing. Teachers want to be prepared. And a lot of teachers, just like most other Americans, don't really feel super confident about their own financial skills and knowledge. So why would they want to go into a classroom and not feel like they were their very best for their students? That's why we find teachers coming to us from states that have requirements and states that don't have requirements, because they know it's an important subject and they want to teach it well. So we're very focused on not just getting the requirements passed, but then following that up with implementation, which is teacher training, professional development, great resources available for teachers to take into their classrooms to create a course that makes sense for that state.
Amazing. And can you maybe you mentioned Connecticut, and Connecticut is one of the recent states, yay, that finally passed this. Can you talk a little bit about the CEE's involvement in that process, and then we can talk
So
about the follow-up.
So I'd love to take a lot of credit for Connecticut, but actually, just as we were starting to have more discussions with them, Connecticut went ahead and passed a requirement.
Okay,
So,
good.
that was great. I will say this: we've done a lot of teacher training in Connecticut, and we hope that some of that set the groundwork for teachers understanding that this was important and wanting to move it ahead. This legislation seems so very simple. Like, who would not want to vote for financial education? But it's
Yeah,
not so simple, as it turns out. Nothing is in politics. It gets, like many things, it gets mixed into other things that are on the docket. And teachers have very real concerns about what this is going to look like for them. Will they
right.
have adequate training and knowledge to present this in the classroom? Will they have adequate prep time? Is there time in the day to do this? Is it going to push out some other requirement? So it's really important to have the support of teachers, of principals, of parents, of the community, as well as the legislature to move these things ahead.
I love it. And my daughter is a freshman here in Connecticut, and she's currently taking a finance course. Now, she will tell you that I forced her to take it, but it is one of the most popular courses that fills up very quickly. So we're fortunate that our high school already had it and have already seen a lot of success with it. So, but you're right. I mean, the teachers and preparing them is the most important thing. So can you talk about maybe a little bit more about what you do with the teachers to help prepare them? And maybe use Connecticut as an example, right? Because the legislation in Connecticut basically is saying that in the next couple of years, I believe, every high school is going to have to mandate that a kid takes finance, correct?
Yes, in fact, I'm just looking up to see students graduating in 2027 and
Okay.
later will be
We have,
required to take a class in personal finance, so 4, 5, 6, 7. So starting with this year's freshman high school class, by the time they graduate, they will need to have taken a class. So we find that teachers, so we actually have a game plan in Connecticut over the next 2 years, and we have a family foundation who's just made a very generous gift,
oh,
which really
wow.
is
Yeah.
going to get the ball rolling. We still need a little more for you folks out there. Please call. We can talk to you about that. But the goal is to have at least 2 teachers fully trained and fully prepared in each of the high schools in Connecticut,
Okay.
because the whole point of this is access for everybody. So some high schools may have teachers that are already teaching this, like where your daughter is, and some not. So we have a plan to reach teachers in every high school in every district. So what will we do with them when we provide the professional development? Well, some of the teachers are already pretty good. So they
Sure.
just might want a brush up and introduction to a variety of resources, new kinds of lessons that we have, especially things that go beyond the basic curriculum. So for example, when there was the whole GameStop kerfluffle, we actually put out a that's a
Yeah.
technical term. We actually put out a lesson on that. So we try to keep things relevant to the students and the teachers. And then there are going to be some teachers who say, I'm not really prepared to teach this. And we'll put together, we have a whole program to train the teachers from soup to nuts, to give them their own knowledge and confidence, and to provide curriculum. We have
Yeah.
a great curriculum based on our Financial Fitness for Life books that goes through, and you can create a whole semester class out of that. We're very careful about being 110% prescriptive, because we know that every school district likes to tweak a little bit, every state likes to tweak a bit. But we were very fortunate that just about 3 years ago, we teamed up with a whole bunch of other not-for-profits, educators, leading research in the field, to bring together and update a single set of K through 12 personal finance standards. They
Okay.
were equity reviewed. They're really great. They are benchmarks for what kids need to know at 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. And they're on our website. I encourage you to go and take a look at them, even if it's just for your own edification, for your own kids. They're actually a really good read, and they will give you a sense of what we're trying to do. We're not trying to teach kids math, although that's always a good thing from my perspective, but we're trying to help them to understand how to solve the problems and the challenges that they will see in their financial life, and make good financial decisions. So there really are, these standards, from my perspective, are really an exercise in critical thinking. So that
Amazing.
underpins all of the professional development we do, all of the lessons we produce. So again, 2 kinds of training for those with experienced teachers, more complete for those that are super new to the subject. We do series of webinars in Connecticut. We're also going to do a couple of in-person days, because sometimes that immersive experience is great. The other thing is
Yeah.
that it's really good when you can get the educators in one place,
Together. Yeah.
because they learn from each other. They start to have a community of practice in this subject,
Yeah.
because it's not the math teachers or social studies or English, it's the personal finance teachers. And we like to do a lot of hands-on active learning.
Yeah.
kinds of lessons, and they get a chance to not only hear about them, but to practice with each other.
Yeah.
So it makes the experience really real for them, and it helps them to bring it back into the classroom. So we do some day-long institutes in person with the teachers. We'll also have an opportunity to send teachers, I hope, from Connecticut to our annual educator conference, which will be in Cleveland this late September, early October. Because that's another great place to really immerse oneself in all sorts of great lessons, knowledge, learning. Our network of educators is there,
Yeah.
teachers from all over the country, people from the Federal Reserve. It's we usually have 400 or 500 educators there, and it's
Wow.
an amazing experience. So
Okay.
so if you really want to help a teacher from your school, you should send them to this our annual educator conference in Cleveland.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's great. And staying on Connecticut for one more minute, do you have an idea of what that impact looks like with the teachers and the students and maybe even what the monetary goal is to achieve this?
Yep. So about 41,000 students graduate from Connecticut public schools each year. There are about 445, so let's say 450 public high schools in
Hmm.
Connecticut. And we have a couple of years to prepare the teachers because it's this year's freshmen. So our goal is to train at least 500 teachers, but ideally 1,000, which is a little bit over one teacher per high school. To have critical mass, you want to hit two, because if somebody wins the lottery and moves to
Yeah.
Nebraska, or
Yeah.
right, or
Yeah.
or takes a job someplace else, you really want to make sure that you've got two trains. So the goal is at least 500. We'd really love to hit 1,000. And what we're doing around that is a lot of very focused outreach to principals and curriculum supervisors, especially in low and moderate income communities. We're planning on hosting professional development webinars, some in-person things, as I've mentioned, some that are very specific to Connecticut. We're also working to have teachers get their students to participate in the National Personal Finance Challenge. And
Oh,
I
cool.
because
Yeah.
it's so much more fun to learn when you're doing something. And the
Yeah.
challenge is great. Part of it is a case study that you present to judges. So there's all sorts of good career skills that are being built: critical thinking, teamwork, presentation, a chance to meet really interesting people who are judges.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we'll want to do some assessments and surveys of the teachers and the students to make sure they're learning. So we're
Okay.
looking to raise actually close to $500,000 so that
Wow.
we can carry out all of this work over the next 2 years. And that would give us 1,000 teachers, not just 500. It would also give us the opportunity to have an in-person state challenge for Connecticut, and to really do some of the outreach, which just takes time to sit down and talk to principals and curriculum supervisors to really give them the aid and support that they need, especially in communities that are less resourced.
Yes.
So it's a pretty big goal. We have a nice start from one of our wonderful families, the whole family actually, that cares about what we do, and have been personally engaged. So we're
Oh,
excited, and we're actually February 16th is our first in-person training in Connecticut to kick that
fantastic.
off.
That's
So
great.
so Connecticut is a great opportunity for us. It's small enough so that we feel like we can get to everybody fast, have a big impact. It's right here in New York. We have some of our own staff, and we hire some master teachers who we've worked with for years and years in Connecticut, who can also carry out some of this training. And that's also a big benefit to the newer teachers, because it's coming from a teacher that looks like them.
Yeah.
So we're really
Wow.
excited about Connecticut, and New York is next on the docket. We're hoping to get legislation passed there. So we're trying to get in front of that by getting that support from the bottom, from educators. And Pennsylvania, another giant state, just passed legislation as well,
Wow.
just a couple of months ago. So we'll be looking to raise money there as well. We're already working in Massachusetts quite effectively in advance of legislation being passed
It
there.
sounds like the Northeast has been slow on this.
They're catching up though. They're
It's good to
catching up.
hear. And it's amazing to me that your comment, oh, we have at least a couple of years, but this is going to go fast, right?
Goes really fast. It goes
Yeah,
really fast because teachers prepare and curriculum gets prepared and schedules, that happens. That doesn't
yeah.
happen on, the day after Labor Day. It
No.
happens years in advance.
Yeah, this legislation is just the beginning of the whole process. And I'm going to say something, and hopefully my compliance officer is not going to make me take this out. But I wanted to let you know, because I have talked to your team about what I can help out with in Connecticut. And, they had mentioned the fundraising. And my partner at Principal Wealth Partners, we've already agreed that we would like to be one of the first financial firms to donate to the cause. And I say that as one of the first because I'm going to reach out to all my fellow advisors in Connecticut and ask them if they would please, step on board and join us with this. Because I think that having advisors in Connecticut support this cause would be tremendous. So
That is, I'm humbled by
yeah,
your generosity. And Julina, we have a wonderful board member in Connecticut, Jenny Van Leeuwen Harrington,
yes,
and I am very happy to come up and do a lunch or a breakfast for you and some of your colleagues to talk about our plans and
oh, that's great.
what we're
Yeah,
doing, and so they can really see and hear from me and one of our educators perhaps what the game plan is,
yeah.
so that they understand that it's very tangible and it can really make a difference.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And maybe I can follow up with Jenny on that too, because I think that'd be great. So
That'd be great. There's really important research that's done by one of our wonderful colleagues, NEFE, that basically just does research for a living, a not-for-profit that does that. They're actually a foundation, and that shows that well-trained teachers have a greater impact on their students.
yeah.
And we also know from our teacher training, because we constantly survey the teachers, that we get 90% plus top box scores on the quality of the training, the quality of the resources they get, whether they feel comfortable taking this information back into their classroom, because if that's not happening, it's all for naught.
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot of great work that we do. We've got the data to back it up,
Yes.
and it really makes a difference. And to the extent that you have advisors that are spread out across the state, have friends who are teachers, who know principals, who know people who are involved in education, to get us connected into each of those school districts, that makes a giant difference, because then we can really talk to the teachers, the principals, and say, hey, what's going to work for the school? Do you want us to come to you? Do webinars work better? Can we have a gathering in Northeastern Connecticut? Because
Sure.
it's, not everybody is on the South Shore.
Yep.
There are people up in the northwest part of Connecticut as well. It's a little sparer once you get away from the
Yeah.
coast, but important to get to those educators, and sometimes travel's a little harder because the distances are just bigger, even in
Yeah,
Connecticut.
absolutely. It's just going back to the equitable education that you had mentioned in the beginning. And thank you for bringing up the research, because I did want to circle back on that, because that is the heart of why CE was founded. Can you talk a little bit about the broader success that your organization has seen over 75 years?
Well, they didn't keep good data back then after
Yeah.
World War II,
Okay.
but you would say that this year alone we're reaching probably 40,000 teachers, not just through our national office, but across our national network. And those teachers in turn are going to reach, probably 3-4 million kids.
Yeah.
So you can add that up over time. But what's important to remember is every year there are new teachers, every year there are new students. So our mission is really never done.
Yes.
Uh, Getting all the requirements passed, we can check the box hopefully in a few years on that. But the constant training, providing relevant resources, that's really important. So our reach has been pretty broad. We're really proud of the fact that we do reach a lot of teachers in low and moderate income school districts, because even this education is for everybody, those kids really need those tools the most and are least likely to get them at home, because their parents are often not around, or they don't speak English, or there's a cultural bias to not talk about money. So it's really important to us. And a lot of those teachers just show up, which is great,
That's
because they
great.
know
Yeah.
how important it is for their kids. And they tell us what you told us about your daughter's experience, which is the kids show up for this class. It
Yeah.
gets them to school,
Yeah.
which is also really, really important because graduating from high school is a game changer. If you don't graduate from high school in this country these days, your ability to earn a living is severely crippled.
Exactly.
So there's been a lot of great industry research in the last few years too, by some really fabulous people across the country. One of the best pieces of research was, for me, from my perspective, I mean, it's all really good, but meaningful to me, was done just a few years ago. And it shows that kids who have financial education, so states with requirements versus not, those students have higher credit scores, lower loan default rates, better packages for financial aid when they apply to college, and that result is outsized for kids from low and moderate income families.
Yeah.
So if you think about all of the challenges that people have with a credit score not being high enough, or showing up at a financial aid office and not knowing what to ask versus knowing what to ask, these students tend to get packages that are more weighted towards scholarship than loans, and
Yeah.
better rates on the loans. So wow, like it's such a giant impact for just a class in personal finance.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the beginning of setting up that foundation, right? Which is the most
It is.
important thing. And as I ask you my last question, I'm going to go back to the survey of the states. I'm sure that listeners are wondering where their state lies in the survey. Can you talk a little bit about what that will show them?
Yes, thanks for asking about that. If they go to our website after February 26th, they will be able to see, for personal finance and economics, exactly what's happening in their state. So if the state has a requirement, if it's for a standalone class, if it's to be integrated, if they just have standards, so you can see exactly where their own state is.
Okay.
So if their state doesn't have a requirement yet, what should they do?
Yes.
They can be in touch. They can be in touch with us,
Okay.
and or any of the partners at Fined 50, but they can be in touch with us,
Okay.
and they can talk to us about any connections they have at the policy or state education level. They can also connect us with companies that might be interested in just getting started with professional development in their area, because it's really important to have the teachers on board as part of this advocacy push. And there's no better way of getting them on board than saying, I've taken some more training. I'm teaching this in class. It's a game
Yeah.
changer. We need to get the legislation passed. If you happen to be in New York or Massachusetts or Delaware or Oklahoma, those are
Mm.
all places where we are currently active in trying to get some legislation passed.
Okay.
So if you're listening and you happen to be in one of those states or know people in those states, that would be particularly helpful. We are very hopeful about New York and Massachusetts, which would be great for, of course, for the Northeast. New Jersey actually already has a requirement that was passed a few years ago.
Okay.
So we're hoping that we can, in the next 2 years, have like the
Yeah.
whole, like from New Jersey, Virginia has a requirement all the way north, have the whole Northeast broadly defined, totally covered.
That would be fantastic. And as much success as we've seen maybe in the last few years with some of these states that will come in the survey, there still are a bunch of others that need to catch up. So
That is true. But we got some of the big ones in on this one,
yeah.
which was really great. It's a lot of kids. So, but we still have a few big states out there like Illinois that don't have a really big solid requirement. So those are the really important ones, because those can really move the needle on the numbers of kids who are affected.
Fantastic. And Nan, is there anywhere else? I know you mentioned the website, but anywhere else that any of the listeners can go to learn more about CEE that you might recommend outside of the
Well,
website?
Well, our website is great. We love that.
Yeah, it's got a
We try
ton of
to
information.
we
I mean,
we try to post pretty frequently on our LinkedIn site. That's an easy place for your listeners, who we hope will turn into our donors, to go. They're probably there anyway professionally. So that's another great spot. Our YouTube channel has lots of clips of things like our student teams from the National Personal Finance Challenge or the National Economics Challenge, and that's just been renewed. Our website also has a blog that has recent research and news instances that we get. We'd love to have people on our database so we can send them things like see in the news when people like you
Yes.
talk about us. You got one of those this morning
I
from us,
did.
which was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've gotten some great mentions this year on Bloomberg. I was interviewed by a Times reporter. So we're pretty much in the news on a variety of things.
Yes.
And then they can also come to our events. We're turning 75 this year. April 30th, we're having our Diamond Gala at the Pier in New York. Steve Leisman is going to be emceeing that for us from CNBC. Glenn Hutchins is our first Visionary Awards honoree. Our distinguished economist this year is Gary Stern, who's just retired from our board. He was the head of the Minneapolis Fed for many years, wrote Too
Yeah.
Big to Fail. So we have one or two other people in the works, but
Wow.
it's always a great evening to understand what we do, meet colleagues, hear the kids, hear the teachers. And it's just for somebody who actually doesn't love going out to events like this, it is a surprisingly nice evening.
Oh, amazing. Congratulations for everything that you're doing for what CE does. I can't express enough how much I've just enjoyed learning about the organization and just would love to find other ways to help. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your interest. We really couldn't do it without people like you. And I want to take the opportunity to wish you best of luck with your new book. I'm looking forward to my copy.
Thank you.
And to seeing you soon, and also to take the opportunity to really work with you and friends and colleagues to make it real for students in Connecticut. It's a very exciting moment.
Yes, let's keep sharing the message.